Hey everyone, today I want to talk about the metrics speed versus power. So when I get a new athlete who has never done coaching before or who has never done structured intervals before, it's very common for them to come to me and speak of their workouts and rides in terms of speed. So they'll say, I'm a 15 mile per hour rider, I want to get up to 17 miles per hour. Or for example, I did this group ride, it's really hard, it's an 18 or 20 or even 24 mile per hour average. So speed is an okay metric. It's really not a metric I typically use. Speed is great when you have a lot of comparisons of the same ride. Like if you're doing the same group ride over time, you can you know what the average speed is, and maybe one day is really, really fast. So you know, okay, this was a much faster day. That was probably a harder ride. But keep in mind that speed can be affected by wind, it can be affected by humidity, it can be affected by your tires, it can be affected by the drafting. There are just so many factors. For example, you might have a crazy fast ride, but maybe you had a tailwind the entire time. And if you looked at the power for that ride, yes, the speed was faster, but maybe it was actually sort of an easier ride and your power was lower. So I encourage the athletes who think in terms of speed. If you have a power meter, please try to switch over to thinking in terms of power. So there are two metrics that you can look at that would be very helpful. You can look at average power or you can look at normalized power. This is also called weighted average power in Strava. Average power, it's an okay metric. It's not great because if you have a lot of stops or periods where you're coasting, all those zeros are going to really drag that down, and your average power might actually be kind of on the low end if you have a lot of stops. So normalized power and the weighted average power in Strava, they're the same thing. That is essentially buffering those zeros. So it is factoring in the lower power times, but it's not giving them as heavy a weight. So it's giving you a value that is probably going to be a little bit higher than the average power, but it's more representative of the cost to your body. Like if this had been a ride without all those zeros dragging it down, what would that power have been? And normalized power is a very good metric for longer periods of time. I would say at least 15 minutes or more. I tend to look at normalized power in like 20-minute chunks or longer. So the way to use normalized power and to get used to thinking in normalized power is when you finish your ride, just look at what the normalized power was. You're going to see a trend. It's probably, if you're doing the same group rides or the same solo rides over and over and over, it's probably going to be pretty similar, and you're going to get kind of this like data pattern. And then watch that trend. That trend might start going up, or maybe you have an outlier of a really strong day and you can think, okay, why was this day good? And you might find that a day where your normalized power is really high, it might not show up in speed. You might have a kind of average speed day because of other factors like wind. So that's why normalized power is a very good metric, and I want you to start thinking of that if you have access to power. 150 watts is always 150 watts. It doesn't matter how fast that wind is. It doesn't matter your condition. It doesn't matter if you were drafting. Whereas speed, 15 miles per hour, is not always the same. You could have a wicked headwind, and if you're going 15 miles per hour into a headwind, you might be working your butt off and it's so hard, but the speed's just not showing you that. But if you look at the power, you will see that you were working very, very hard.